I,
Hello, writer friends, and welcome back to the Right Away After Party, part two of Nick's wonderful adventure where her query letter was actually accepted and read live on the podcast named,
the shit you don't know about writing.
and who heads up this podcast?
Um, two agents and an author, Cece, Carly, and Bianca.
So when Nick told me this had happened and she sent me the link to the podcast, I thought, oh, okay, that's so neat. And I clicked on the podcast and went to the podcast. They spoke about her query letter for over 20 minutes, half an hour.
Yeah, for a
I
while.
was I was just gobsmacked
Me
because
too.
they went into deep detail. And on the
Yes,
one hand, I'm thinking, oh, heartbreak, heartbreak,
I
poor
know.
Nick. Oh, she must be, oh dear. But then when I sat back on my heels and went, wow, they spoke about this for a long time, all about
Yes,
Nick and her book.
yes,
And they did give her some really good advice. So
they did.
walk us through. You said they gave you a bunch of gifts.
Yes. So one of the gifts was that they spoke about it for a prolonged amount of time. I mean, normally they're like, the books and hooks is that's a segment called when you send your query. It's called books and hooks. Usually, it's like 5 minutes, 6 minutes they spend, kind of like going back and forth because they do read the query letter as well. But I felt like they spent quite a bit of time, kind of like conversing about my query letter, about the one thing that was such a great takeaway was they said my hook was phenomenal, and I do remember them saying phenomenal. so, and I do think that Carly, the one agent, did say like, "Why is this not in my inbox?" So it will be in her inbox shortly.
Aha.
Um, but there was just so many little nuggets of like real gifts, and there were some, obviously I felt a little bit, sad because you always want your work just, embraced and loved. It's like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever, send it right away. And when they had some, not grievances, but they did have some suggestions of changes that needed to take place. One thing they did say, though, they did think the query letter was pretty solid. They just felt like the stakes at the end needed to be raised, which I agree, and I'm going to fix that, obviously. But that was kind of wonderful to hear that my query letter did feel like it was pretty solid. The one
Yes,
thing,
I remember, sorry, I remember that they
Mhm.
also said to remove the dates of the
Yes, yes,
prizes that
the
you got for
contest that I
Rise.
had.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah,
I totally agreed with that one.
I did
Because
too. I did
even
too.
I thought the list was very long, and you and I
Yeah,
have talked about this,
yes,
but we understand also there's a whole emotional growth that you and I have to go through
yes,
to get to the point where we are at today.
yeah,
So yes, you submitted those X number of years ago,
yeah,
but you still haven't finished the book because, well, we know Nick needs this work and Kath needs that work. We'll go into that maybe next
yeah,
episode. Uh,
yeah.
but I thought that was really good advice that they gave you there. And
I
then
did too.
they
I did
talked
too.
about the first 5 pages.
Yes, and they read that, they talked about the first 5 pages. They gave a
Mm.
quick synopsis of what those were, and they both said they don't think I started in the right place. One gave advice to back up a little bit, to give her more time. Another one said no, absolutely not. Just cut right to the action, cut right to the
Mm.
inciting incident, and take her to that morning. And both advice, I have heard before. This is not the first time I've heard that.
Okay.
It's hard because I was so married and loved that beginning. I worked and honed that beginning for so long. It was a newer beginning.
What made you love that beginning?
I just love how much she just gives of herself to her sister. But I could still show that in the morning of, the morning that she's getting her
Oh.
ready for school. I still can show that. I can still
Mm.
show her love of her sister because that's really the crux of the book, in my opinion.
Agree. And at this moment of crux, you know what we have to do, right?
We'll be back for part 3. We're cat. Okay.